we're back again on the Encouragement Conquers All podcast, and you know why we're here. To be encouraged, we have to design our life. To design our life, there's 6 areas to design our life. If you've been watching every week, you know what they are. If you haven't, go check out the other episodes that will help you to design your life mentally, to design your life physically, to design your life socially by giving back, to design your life in your career, in your finances, design your life, your own family life, and to design your life spiritually with your faith. But we are here today to focus a lot on, mental strength. And we have a gift here. And we'd like to welcome a guest on here. I'm honored to have Seth Pepper here. He's an elite level sports psychologist, mental performance coach, and a former professional athlete. He's actually a swimmer. I mean, let me tell you something. I'm like a flying weight. You know what I mean? I jump in the pool. It's like I'm going to drown because, I don't know how to get there. I'll do a couple laps, but man, I'd love to know about his swimming success. That's for sure. And he's a high performance mental coach. Nothing short of inspiring. His expertise has helped elite athletes, coaches, business leaders, and artists reach new heights of success. He shared with me before the show, he said, look, I've just seen so many people become successful, and I just want to help others to be successful. So if you want to be successful, if you want to make a difference, you want to listen to this show because Seth is going to help you out with that. He did it himself firsthand in the competitive arena. Seth understands the drive for excellence and the pursuit of greatness. I always say, when you strive to be great, you want others to be great. And guess what? This is what Seth wants. His unique approach of high performance coaching unlocks secrets to success and helps individuals break through barriers to achieve their full potential. Join us as we delve into Seth's remarkable journey, his insights into mental performance, his transformative coaching methods that have empowered Olympians, world champions, business executives, even top Netflix film directors. Seth, come on, join me. What's going on, Seth?
All right. Just happy to be here. Happy to be alive, as you said earlier.
Yeah, one day at a time. So why are you excited to be alive? That's one way to encourage some people today.
I've just had the blessed life to be able to, go through and first start out with parents that just allowed me the space to be able to dream, and then go after those dreams. And so I have a really unique story of, personal, if that's a good place to start.
I would love to start there. That's where I struggle sometimes with mental, performance coaches. Like a lot of times we want to kind of make ourselves into gurus, and that's not what this is about. We want to make, you know what I mean? We want to make ourselves, oh, look what, I can tell you, but then they never tell you anything about their journey. So I'd love to start there. Usually I have to end. A lot of times I do the show, people know that I have to end with those questions. So let's start there.
Okay. Yeah. It's funny. I love it because, I feel like everything's kind of found me rather than me going after it. So, when I was a little kid, I'm old enough to have seen the Miracle on Ice on TV. So I was a little tiny kid and I watched the United States win the gold medal against.
Great movie.
Yeah. So the real thing, the movie's awesome. The real thing is where it started. And so I was kind of bit by the bug of like the Olympics, but I came from parents that weren't athletes. So I was kind of like this in the back of my head, the Olympic dream. And when I was 14, I was just like, man, now or never, I'm running out of time. And if I don't start something, there's no way I can do this. So a true story. It sounds like a movie, but it's, how it all happened. I started watching the Olympics with the idea of choosing the sport. I didn't have a sport. And it was, okay, let's figure out what I can do in my small little town. I'm originally from a tiny town in Oregon. And so just started studying all the different, events and kind of process elimination came down to swimming. I was like, well, there's got to be a swimming pool somewhere. So I started watching swimming, and I always believe in like timing, right? I was kind of taught, that from my parents in, right place, right time. This girl, she wins the gold medal. The announcer says, if there's someone out there that wants to do what you just did, what would you recommend? And I remember saying, whatever she did, that's what I'm going to do. And she said, well, I came through the YMCA. So I went down to the local Y, walked up to the head coach. I said, I want to go to the Olympics. Can you help me? And he smiled and he said, because that's not like, I'm a freshman in high school. So you don't hear that very often, just being so blunt, but that's just the way I live my life. And so he goes, well, do you know how to swim? I said, no, I don't. And he started
Oh
laughing.
my goodness, that's awesome.
Yeah. So
You're right. This could be a movie.
so he said, well, you're going to have to learn how to swim first. So he sent me down, with the little kids, 8-year-olds. And I went down there. And these little kids that came up to about my waist was kicking my butt all the time. But, what seemed like a disadvantage actually became, in the big picture, became an advantage because I didn't have any success. Everything was about failure. And so when you don't know what failure looks like and it's just about learning, then all of a sudden you got an advantage. And so for me, it was all about like, what can I do to get better? And my dad was really into self-development. So he had this book on memory, and in it had this, kind of like the beginning of sports psychology. There was this study, I believe it was the German basketball players, and they had 3 groups. One was all they did was shoot free throws. Then they had another group that was doing part mental, some mental training. And that's the first time I'd even heard that you could train your mind. And then they did half the time they were doing physical. And then they had this group that didn't even touch basketball. All they did was mental. And when the results came back, the lowest scoring by far was physical only. The mixed group was the highest, but then this group that did only, like all they did was the mental stuff, was just a little bit below the top. So I was like, man, that's the X factor. That's how I'm going to, speed up the process to get to where I want to go. So I was training my mind and my body at the same time from the very beginning. That's how the foundation
What
was
kind of
laid.
stuff were you doing, Seth, to train your mind at that age?
Well, a lot of it started out pretty simple. So I became fascinated with the power of the subconscious mind. So, we do a lot of things subconsciously and we don't even realize it. One example I always like to start with is, if you're driving age, and you're in your hometown and you decide, I want to go to the store, right? You get in your car and you drive to the store. You just make the choice, I'm going to go do that. But if you really thought about it, like that's a really complicated thing to do. It's also really dangerous. It's also chaotic because you don't know exactly what's going to happen once you get out there, but you just go and do it on autopilot and you maybe even have a phone call on the way. Like that's a really powerful thing to do. So that's, a good example of the power of the subconscious mind. I call it the supercomputer. And so once I found out, like, oh man, what if we could like dial into this supercomputer and program it? That's what I got interested in. And so
Like muscle memory for a basketball player,
exactly, where you don't even need to think about it, right? You're
where you're
almost like
just
watching
first you
yourself.
think about it,
Yeah.
and you envision it, then you just do it, then you keep thinking about it, and then you do it. Just keep repetition.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that
And so what happened from there? I love this journey, by the way. This is fun.
yeah, so I went to the Sports Illustrated. They had an Olympic edition, and there was this Olympian in there, Pablo Morales. I took and I cut his picture out. This is way before people were doing vision boards and all that sort of stuff now. And so I was just thinking, like, okay, I want to think this thought over and over. I want to think about the Olympics as often as I can. And I want to program the subconscious mind so that it's normal, right? So I'm building this sort of bridge to this future. And so I took this picture of Pablo and I took a picture of myself and I put it on the wall so that I could see it every day. And then it was like a post-it note, it was just like a reminder, like, think about this, think about this, think about this. And so 4 years later, and I also did visualization and certain things like that. And, put my goals up, all kinds of things to kind of create this supportive environment around me. So by the time I was a senior, I became the state champion. And then I went out, and I work with people of all different ages. So I'm always be in control of the conversation with authority. So I reached out to the coaches. I didn't wait to get discovered, right? So I made a list of the top 20 programs and I wrote a letter saying, hey, I've only been swimming for 4 years. I see you're in the top 20. Imagine what we could do together, right? And I got a good response from all
Yeah.
the programs. And
What you believe is what you receive. That's what I say. If you believe it, you can make the impossible possible.
yeah, amen. Exactly. So I'm living in this life of just like thinking it in my head over and over, and then just kind of always trying to, push myself further and further, right? So I went to the University of Arizona, uh, and by the time I was my second year, my sophomore year, I was going against the Olympic gold medalist, and I was beating him the entire race until the final stroke. So within 6 years of starting being this kind of crazy
Wow.
dreamer, I was playing at the highest level. I eventually became a two-time national champion, and I went the fastest split ever recorded. And the person that handed me the national championship trophy was Pablo Morales, the guy that I
Holy cow. And what would you say, like in that 6 years, were the defining elements to get you there? I'm sure that's how kind of you start your training. That I want to help you with that. I'd love to know what the defining elements to for somebody to get to make their dreams happen.
Well, I think, I always build a foundation of possibility. So, it's really simple. I start with goals. I think goals are important because a lot of times people will say, oh, well, I want to go do this. But it's like, well, have you actually written it down? Do you have like kind of charted out a little bit of a map to it? So put down some metrics. I want to be this fast, or I want to make this many shots in a row, or I want to do whatever it might be. And so what you're doing is, I always say, the subconscious mind, just like you driving to the store, it's like a mapping system. So if you never put a GPS coordinate down, like where's your car going? You got to put it down somewhere. And so that's what I start with people, is to create that. And then also I create the space of possibility. So, to me, anything's possible.
For
I've
sure,
seen it too
for
many
sure. And what
times.
Seth, what you're talking about, like those 6 areas I share right before every guest comes on each week, everybody should be putting their goals down for each area of your life.
Yeah.
And then what you're saying is, then you want to find people like a Seth Pepper who've already done this, who've already achieved this, and go, hey, can you walk with me
Yeah.
to help me to make my goal? I suggest you should have all different types of, I call them encouragement coaches, people that are going to encourage you, because it takes courage to dream. It takes courage to believe. It takes courage to do the impossible. And Seth, that's what you're doing. I just love having you on this show, because it's all about, I love having all different types of people on the show, because it's all about finding a way to help others achieve things that they never thought they could do. And that's what you do.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm touched by this.
Yeah. No, and it's been fun to be able to, just kind of be able to speak possibility into something that might be seen as impossible at the beginning. Like, to me, I always say, we're going to create miracles. They're going to seem like miracles to other people, but we'll know that we actually were part of the creation of it. I've had people, like all different, sports and walks of life, like you said in the intro. But an example would be that I just helped someone go to the NHL, and, hockey player. And when I met him, I call him like confidence roadkill. Like, he could have just drifted off and just stopped playing hockey and, just let the system beat him down. But we worked on his confidence. We had him write out a letter to himself, like where he saw himself in the future. We worked on his goals. I started having him talk, first person singular, self-talk. Like we heard Muhammad Ali would say, I am the greatest. And he said that before he was world champion. He spoke it into existence. He convinced himself that he could do it first before he did it. So I had this, kid at the time say, I am going to the NHL camp, right? And we said it, and it would make him really uncomfortable at first. But that's what we want to do, is we want to breathe some life into this. We want to make
Yeah, and
ourselves uncomfortable at the beginning.
yeah, that's what you're doing, Seth. Is so for somebody to say I'm amazing, for somebody to say that I'm great, first, and I say this in the first episode of the docuseries that we have on my basketball team, I say the way to do it, you need a God, you need a friend, you need a coach, you need a mom, a dad, a brother, so somebody that speaks you're amazing into, because we think that we can get to I'm amazing through self.
Yeah.
And you can, but for me personally, I don't believe that process can happen without having someone else speak that into you. What are your thoughts on that? Would you believe in that? Or would you say people can just do it through osmosis, it just happens?
I think that there's a lot that has to happen. So, it's good to find people that are mentors that you can trust with your dreams. But you got to be really, like Kobe says, protect your imagination, protect your dreams. You got to protect these ideas because a lot of times, as you probably know, we have people around us, like humans by our nature. We have the man in the mirror, basically, which is what your internal world a lot of times is the external, the external world around you is your internal world that you're trying to work through. And so people project, human beings project. So your parents will always, you could be 80 years old, your parents are 100 years old, they're always going to see you as, their
Kid,
child,
yeah.
right? So they're projecting their image onto you. That's just a basic example. And so a lot of times when people say, I want to go do this, and they say it to even a loved one, and that person says, what are you talking about? Keep your feet on the ground. Think practical.
Plan B, plan B, plan B.
Exactly. What they are actually doing is they are projecting their limiting beliefs onto you. It has nothing to do with you. They don't see you. And I helped someone get into the NBA, and I told him about this. I warned him. I said, most people are crabs in the bucket, right? That phrase comes from, you can put a bucket of crabs out there. You don't need to put a top on it, because as soon as one crab starts to climb out, the rest of them pull it back, right? That's what most people are, like, is come back
I
to
agree.
my limiting beliefs. How dare you dream? Because I'm not going to allow myself to dream. So you can't do that. And then if we get sucked into that poison, then we become, another one of the crabs in the bucket. So what I try to do is have people, find people you can trust, people that you can talk. Like for me, when I'm working with someone, it's like, okay, this is a safe space. Anything's possible in this space. I believe in the impossible, so to speak. I don't think there is an impossible.
Yeah, for sure.
And so once you start to see yourself in your I am statement, so it's a combination of someone around you, but also how are you talking to yourself? Because you're your world's greatest expert by 10x, right? Like they've done studies on it, and you're 10 times more powerful than anyone you will ever meet. Because you're the most familiar. If you think about it, it's really super simple and practical. You're the most familiar voice you'll ever hear.
For sure.
You hear your parents a lot, but you heard yourself more often in your head or out loud. So when you say something, like, that's it. So if you're out on the court and you say, man, I suck, and I might as well start taking and stabbing the ball with a needle or something. Like, you're destroying your performance on how you're talking to yourself. So that's what I try to do, is let's work on the roadmap. So let's work on having our goals and putting them out there, and they're going to make us uncomfortable. And then let's work on how we're doing our self-talk. Like, how are we talking to ourselves, right? If you're the greatest expert, are you supporting yourself or are you hurting yourself, right? I know it's super cool for people to say, man, I suck, and everybody around you laughs, but they're laughing and you're calming them down. But what is that doing for you? That's not really helping you at all. So those sort of things, like really simple, super simple stuff. So,
Yeah, it might seem simple to you, but when you've had I just had a player on my team. His dad took him to Denny's.
mm-hmm.
He said, "Hey, son, I just want you to know today's gonna be the last day on this earth that I'm gonna have. I just want you to know, take care of your mother, do what's right." And he thought he was giving him a pep talk. He goes to school, he goes to practice, he comes home, and his dad's laying there dead.
Wow.
You know, the the things that people are going through, like I know you see it as simple. I just want to speak encouragement to you. That's why I'm saying this. Like what you're doing for people to speak truth to them, that they are good, that they do matter, that they are important. Like that is such a hard task for most people.
Yeah.
I bet you there's a lot of listeners right now saying, "Man, I don't know. I don't know the last time I've said that I was good."
Yeah.
And I couldn't even when I give people hugs and I look at them, I go, my line, our branding line is, "You're amazing." Like we have cars that say, "You're amazing. You're amazing." Like
Mm-hmm.
the homeless, like they'll yell at me some days, like, "Do your effing job," because I forget to tell them they're amazing. You know what I mean? They get mad at me. That's how much of a job it is for
Yeah.
me. But like what you're doing, Seth, and you might see as simple as just, and I'm sure you've seen that is so important for people. So how is this spoke? I mean, you talked about helped somebody go to the NHL, helped somebody go to the NBA. How do you feel like when you like kind of take time to pull back and think about these things, that you are part of that process?
Well, it's definitely, I mean, I will add that I said simple, but I didn't say easy, because a lot of times,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Yep. No.
because I like to say that power is hidden in the obvious, right? So where is it? Is it in a book? Is it high up on a mountain? No, it's right here. It's, when Muhammad Ali was saying, "I am the greatest," he wasn't saying it about someone else. He was looking into the camera, but he was using the camera as a mirror. So we start with ourselves. But yeah, it can be really difficult, especially if you didn't grow up that way or you're not in a supportive environment. But as far as like helping people to do things, that are amazing, I feel like there's something. When I was younger, I had a mentor that said that I would be a preacher. And
Really?
yeah, and I didn't really understand it because I wasn't going to church on a regular basis. I wasn't studying the Bible. That was my idea of a preacher. But what I realized through my own experience of being able to be second a bunch and then finally win, that there's a point of like going into the flow state, the zone, the moment, being present. All those are basically the same experience. What they have in common, because that's when you're at your best. What they have in common is that it's egoless, right? It's not about you. Something, God, spirit, energy, whatever you want to call it, something bigger than you is doing the doing, right? And you're almost like out of body watching yourself do it. And so like with basketball, I have basketball players that say, "Man, I got in the game, I did this turnaround jump shot. I've never even practiced that shot. I don't know how it happened. I was like watching myself do it, you know?" And so now I realize I've kind of become this preacher of performance, where it's like I'm trying to help people to move beyond themselves, because it's weird. It's like we're at our best when we're in a competition, but we're not even competitive. We're just doing what needs to be done when it needs to be done. And so in my coaching, I am egoless too. So I'm watching, even in this conversation right now, every time I talk about this stuff, it's different for each person. So I'm participating, but I'm also watching at the same time, because I feel like there's something that happens between us that is just organic, right? Like and so it takes kind of my ego out of it, because I think if I own it, and it leads to any sort of like I don't know, just feeling like I'm better than something or someone or what, then it gets in the way. So I have to stay out of the way and just allow it to flow through. So
Yeah,
it's a huge
how do people who have gifts like you and others, because I know there's a lot of talented listeners out there, like how do you stay out of your own way and not let negative ego, positive ego? For me, ego is to exalt God only, like
Mm,
to not be about myself, to be about others, to be about Him. And it's for me, ego is to edge God out. I got that from Ken Blanchard, who's one of my encouragement coaches who I meet 2-3 times a year, who helps me a lot. And I love that because like it really isn't me. I say I don't deserve this life, but I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm appreciative. And so what helps me is being appreciative, being thankful, being grateful, being somebody that says, it's an honor. Like I tell my kids, some of these kids have nothing. Some of them have everything, but whether they have nothing or everything, I'm honored that I get to be in their life.
Yeah.
So what helps you get out of the way?
Well, there's a number of things. I try to keep things super practical because like there are people that come from the academic. I don't really come from, I got my degree in college, but for me, it's really, I'm a fellow warrior. I know what it's like to go out into the battle, so to speak, because anytime you're going to go do something that you really care about, there's going to be big two things that are going to be there. Pressure. So, how do you handle pressure? Because pressure happens when you care about something, but you don't know what's going to happen. And so your mind is here to protect you. So your mind's going to run all these scenarios like, are we going to be the hunter? Or are we going to be the hunted? Right. And it flips from these two extremes. So how we handle those pressure moments shows like, are we going to show up or are we going to run away? Right. And so that's what I try to help people do with, just simple tools and simple examples. But again, simple isn't necessarily easy. The other thing that is always going to be there is failure. So if you go back to the beginning of when we first met each other, I told you that I started really late. So I didn't have any sort of history. I hadn't achieved anything. And so for me, everything was about learning. So I didn't see failure as failure. I just saw it as collecting information. And so when I studied Kobe, I mean, to me, Kobe's like the archetype for, man-made goat. And if you really study his journey, he was in a process constantly of study. And when you're studying something, then you're neutral, right? And it's not about you, it's about what can I learn? How can I get better? Mastery is kind of like the name of the game, where you're trying to strive for perfection with the understanding that perfection doesn't exist, but you want to try as best you can. And you're constantly working on yourself. So I think once you start to take that perspective of, what can I learn from this? Then all of a sudden you can deal with failure in a completely different way and actually lean into failure. Because when the irony is, the paradox of it is that when it's most uncomfortable, failure, you're usually collecting the most amount of information.
Yeah, that's what most of our guests on this podcast say. My grandmother, she's on our podcast twice. She's been on twice. She's 105, my grandmother,
Awesome.
and she's unbelievable. But one of her major lines is, "If it's not tough and it doesn't hurt, it doesn't count." You know what I mean? But she says it that way, but it's just so simple.
Yeah.
But it's not easy to hear that, but it's so true. And any of the greatest people that have lived, the Dr. Martin Luther Kings, the Mother Teresa's, who would you say in history of American or world history are some of the great advocates for saying, this is tough, this hurts, but they pursued forward? I mean, you say Kobe, he's like a researcher. Who would you say, Seth, is somebody like, man, unbelievable person? Yeah. I just love studying that person. Anybody?
Well, the person that comes up a lot is Viktor Frankl.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
You like Victor? You're a big Vic fan? All right.
Of course.
Not everybody. People might not know about this guy. He's unreal. Tell her, maybe some listeners don't know about him. Tell them a few stories about him.
Oh, sure. This is my version. I got a simple mind, so I hold on to simple stories. But Viktor Frankl was, I believe, a psychiatrist, and then also he was a neurosurgeon, right? So he studied the brain. He survived at least two concentration camps, and while he wrote a book afterwards. I believe it's called The Meaning of Life. And I've always, for me, I have a phrase that came to me when I was about 6 or 7 years old: unlimit your potential. It's right behind me on the wall. And the where that comes from is my mom struggled with manic depression my whole life. And so I think I For me, it started with a sort of curiosity, like, why is my mom not really motivated or not like me, and I'm one of the most motivated people I know. So what I realized later now is that what I was doing was recognizing patterns, right? I was just looking at patterns. I wasn't making judgment. I was just like, what's different about that person versus me? And then I was always the kid on the block that would say, "Hey, let's go jump our bikes. I think we can jump, let's do this with a ramp and let's see how, I think we can go farther today." Right? I was always a kid
Yeah.
trying to encourage myself and encourage people around me.
How's it going? It's Justin Fatica, and I can tell you I'm so thankful for your encouraging messages and engagement and joining us for our videos that we hope are bringing you encouragement when you need it most. Now, before you go, I want to tell you about some exciting news. Since I was 19 years old, it's my dream to build facilities for kids. Well, that dream is happening. It's a place where young people and their families can relax, socialize, work out, be encouraged, that they can make a difference in somebody's life every day or have their lives be impacted. That's where we need you. We need you to ask yourself if you'd like to help us to break ground. You can be a part of this mission within less than 1 year. But if we don't have help, we can't do this. Now, I know right now there are a lot of people struggling, but we're just looking for pocket change, a rainy day fund, or to connect us with partners who can help make this dream a reality. We want every single kid and every single family to know they're amazing. And it starts with you. Please like, share, and subscribe to our content so we can keep you updated, so you can keep us going. And together, remember, we are making a lasting impact. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for your support, and stay encouraged. And never forget, you were made for an amazing day, and it starts with what lives within you. You're amazing.
So I was always sort of studying, whether I knew it or not, what I now call the blueprint of greatness. And so when I hear people that study patterns, Kobe, Victor, it just fascinates me, because I think that's what life really boils down to, performance, but I think just how you live in the human condition. And so Victor, when he was in the concentration camp, was noticing that there were basically like 3 types of people, personality types. One was the negative, the pessimist, right? And they died twice. They died while they were living, because they were miserable all the time, worrying and seeing the worst and everything. And then when they eventually did die, right? But was really, at first, when I first heard this, was a challenge, because I grew up with this idea of positive thinking, positive thinking, positive. The positive people also passed away around the same time as these pessimists, because they were in a state of delusion. They weren't accepting what was going on. They were just putting a Band-Aid on it of positivity. Now, this is a distinction I make with myself and with others, is that being optimistic is different than positive. Optimism is pain, right? Acceptance of the situation. We're in a bad situation, these concentration camps, but it has a purpose. The pain has a purpose, and that will give you a brighter day in the future, right? From the understanding, the growth that you get from it. So pain plus purpose equals optimism. So what I try to give people is what I call, just basically this optimistic approach. I just, that everything in life, we study the Stoicism, right? Your obstacle is your way, right? So everything that comes towards you that looks like an obstacle or serves as resistance, it's specific to you. So your obstacles might not be an obstacle to me, but my obstacles might not be an obstacle to you, but they're specifically made for me, because they're exactly what I need to learn and grow from. And if I keep moving through it, pain plus purpose, I will be optimistic about what I'll learn when I go through it. So I have people that, are on teams. Team environment can be really political, and it doesn't have anything to do with your performance. It's someone's, you know, uh, someone's dad owns the team, or someone's dad was in the NBA, or someone's dad was in the NHL,
Yep.
and their kid gets a preference. It's not about performance, it's politics. So I say, okay, well, this is part of the lesson. This is part of our resistance. This is part of us talking to authority. This is part of us taking care and ownership of our life, our destiny. Are you going to be the prince, or are you going to be the king? The prince blames people. The prince, is waiting to be anointed to power. The king takes ownership, takes responsibility. Do you need to change teams? Do you need to go somewhere else? Right. And so, yeah, I'm throwing out a lot, but that's
Yeah, no,
where
so
I come from.
yeah, like what I love, like what you're saying about Viktor Frankl, and that what you're also saying about situations, that there's a purpose to our pain.
Oh, yeah.
There's a purpose to our pain. Pain is power. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it can create a power and authority that we have that others might not receive, because they run from that pain, or they hide from that pain, or they avert that pain. And that's what Victor learned. There's purpose in this moment that I'm in right now in the concentration camps.
Yeah.
What he also says, you have to be realistic, right?
Yeah.
You have to be realistic. Say, look, like you're saying, this is a situation we're in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we got to deal with family. We got to deal with this jerk over here. We got to deal with this situation. But how are you going to deal with that realistic situation? And the other thing he did in his books is he shared about improvising. There is a way. There is a way to have joy here.
Yeah.
There is a way to have hope here.
Yeah.
You can be the Debbie Downer, but you're going to die twice. Nobody wants to die twice. We only want to die once, right?
Yep.
And so that's what you're saying, and I love that.
Yeah.
I love that, and I think that's probably how you deal with so many different unique. So you talk about somebody from the NHL, somebody from the NBA. Who else? What other arenas are you in?
Well, as far as sports, a lot of golf, a lot of tennis. Yeah, you name the sport, like lacrosse, soccer. Just had a high school kid that got his first MLS contract. Just a lot of like helping people go through, systems, and be able to realize their dreams, and maybe even have a professional career at things. And so I started getting on podcasts and telling my story. Another part of my story that I should throw in is that I have a younger brother. He's 2.5 years younger than me. And when he was 17, he decided he wanted to swim.
Okay.
Very different personality than me. I'm like the student. I'm like the coach. And my younger brother is more like the social butterfly. Like, he just wanted to be part of a team. But everything works. And so I left to go to Arizona, and he's still in Oregon. And so I started doing with him what I do now, which is the remote coaching. And I would take him through all these mental things and, helping him. He eventually went to university, and his final year, his fourth senior year, got into the finals at nationals. And again, it's through this access point between your ears, the doorway. We got to keep the doorway open. We use familiarity can be really powerful. So it's really simple with my brother. It was just basically, your brother did it, you can do it. And, as brothers will know, all you want to do is beat your older brother.
Oh, of course.
So he goes out and he takes the fastest race that's ever been in that event, and he destroys the field. And we became the first brothers to ever win the same national title in the same event in the history of swimming. And then we did it at world championships. We won medals as well, first brothers to do that in swimming. And we started super late, right? 14 and 17. So we didn't specialize like the culture now, like specialize when you're 2 years old. Now, we didn't do that. We started when we were in high school or older. And then we went all the way to the top, and we used our mind to do it. So I use those as starting points of my personal experience, my brother's personal experience. So I started telling these stories on podcasts, and then I'd get people, not just from sports, but business and arts, so like fashion designers, and like you mentioned, a film director heard me on a Formula One. So I work with race car drivers. So I was on a podcast for Formula One, and he said, "Hey, I'm a film director. Could you work with me like you would work with an athlete or a driver?" I said, "Sure, let's try it." So we did it. We worked on pressure. How do you handle pressure? And then he changed his relationship to pressure, and he got a project off the ground that he couldn't get off the ground. And it was with Netflix. And then we kept on working on things. Here he's on a set and he's got millions of dollars that are his responsibility because he's the director. And we worked through, dealing with failure and just basic performance stuff. And then the film was released and it became the #2 film globally for Netflix, right? A project that couldn't even get off the ground. And it just shifted from his, basically, it started when he was pitching it. He wasn't getting anywhere with a pitch. And then we went over, okay, what's your relationship to pressure? What's your relationship to failure? He's like, oh, I get it. I got to lean into pressure. I got to lean into failure. And he went very next meeting and he got it greenlit. I said, what's the difference between the two? He said, well, the first time I was telling them what I thought they wanted to hear. The second time, I just went all in, and I told them, this is the way I want to do it, right? And I didn't hold back. And that's what got it greenlit. So basically, you just take performance and you can translate it across all these sports, business, arts, and it's all the same, How are you handling these basic things about being a human?
And have you ever had anybody really lose and keep losing, and you had to stay with them? Like meaning they didn't become the national champion, or they didn't get a Netflix, but they're still they've worked with you for a long time, and it's like lose, 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 lose,
Yeah.
or no, that's never happened.
I love that question. There are, everyone's got a different journey. So I always say that big breakdowns lead to big breakthroughs because things need to break free, right?
Yeah.
And we got to rebuild them better. So I've had people that have gone through long periods, what felt like long periods to them because it's uncomfortable, all this resistance and obstacles. But I always say, those original thoughts, those dreams came to you. They didn't come to me. So we have to honor those. That is an inspired thought. It is a real thing. And let's keep going. And they've dodged and even the kid that made it to NHL, weird stuff would happen. We'd go try out for the top team. Like in hockey, if you get 3 goals in one game, it's called a hat trick.
Yep.
He had 4 games, and of those 4 games, 3 games he got a hat trick. He's like, this doesn't happen in hockey, right? He goes in for his meeting with the coach, and they say, sorry, we can't use you. Like, what the heck's going on? So sometimes the universe or God is pushing you to something bigger, something better. So something that looks like failure actually is you just haven't asked for something big enough. So that can be something we deal with. We're banging our head against a lot of these doors, but these doors are just small rooms. You got to ask for a bigger room. And once he started thinking bigger, then those doors started opening up because that's where he should be going.
Yeah, I got a question. How about, one of our areas in designing our life is the faith life, the spiritual life. Like, how have you noticed, has that helped? Does that help people or does that hinder people when people have faith in God? Does that encourage them? What's your thought?
Great question.
And I don't want to hear like, well, it depends on the person. Like everything's for everybody.
Yeah.
No, what would you say? I asked this question to another guest, and he had a team, a rugby team, and they were on he works with the Olympic rugby team in Fiji.
Nice.
And Fiji were, they're cannibalists, originally, and their country became Christian, and they worship as a team. Mm-hmm. And what he said, he goes, I'm not too much involved with my faith, actually. Mm-hmm. But he says, I've never seen a team as close knit as this team in my life because they were worshiping together. They were a team together. Yeah. And he said it was so beautiful to see. Yeah. What are your thoughts of faith for some of the people that you work with, and does it help?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Another good question. So I call them the 3 M's, right? So M, the letter M. The first M is mechanical. So if you think of a race car, you got to have the car running, right? It's got to have good fuel. It's got to be, the engine's got to be good. You got to take care of things. So that's our body, right? The physical, the mechanical. That's usually on them to take care of. I'll make suggestions about sleep and, lifestyle stuff. but still they have to, take care of the mechanical. That's the first M. The second M is mental. So that's what a lot of times people will think, oh, that's what you work with is mental training, mental coaching, mental performance, mental health. Yes. But what I discovered from my own personal experience was there's a third M, which is
Okay.
magic. I call it magic,
Okay.
which on some level, some way, you have to believe, right, that there is something greater than you. And that's what I want to tap into. Because if you want to go to that next level, a lot of times we hit glass ceilings because it's all about us. And so, for me, I'd been second 2 years in a row. And my coach, who's an Olympic champion and he's also a world record holder, he would say, "Why are you apologizing for your greatness?" I'd be like, "What the heck is he talking about? I'm racing the Olympic gold medalist. I'm beating the whole race. I lose at the last stroke. Like, that's pretty darn good." And then it happened the second time. And he was like, "Why are you asking for permission?" I was like, "What the heck is he talking about?" So my senior year, now I'm not going to cuss, but the F switch,
you can let it rip, man. Come on, let it rip. Be real.
Okay, so I'm standing behind the start. And I'm not a person that does this very often, if ever. I'm standing behind the start and just something happened, something clicked, and I just said, "Fuck this race, fuck these people, I'm fucking taking this." It was a moment of peace. It wasn't a moment of aggression. It was a moment of surrender, right? It was a
freedom.
religious experience for me, now that I look back on it. And I went faster than, like, I almost broke the American record by 2 inches. I was going so fast that, we have to turn 3 times and you try and time it because I swim butterfly. So you got to time it. I was swimming so much. It was like driving a race car that you thought you knew, like you'd use all the gears, and then you find this fuck it switch. I call it the fuck it switch, where all of a sudden it was like, oh shit.
I appreciate you being real on the show because that's what I'm about. I want to encourage people regardless of where they're at. So thank you for being real.
So yeah, I mean, that's what I try and help people, that fuck it switch. But the fuck it switch is a moment of transcendence. So if you think back, like, why were we so moved by Star Wars, right? Well,
Okay.
Star Wars was actually, it was George Lucas, the director, but one of his main counsels was Joseph Campbell, who studied mythology. He was very famous for taking mythology, which is taking all the patterns of guidance for humans throughout the time and these stories and cross-reference them into the human, they called it the hero's journey. And so when we're watching, George Lucas's Luke Skywalker, right? And he's talking to Obi-Wan and he's talking to Yoda, right? They say, what do they say? Use the Force. Trust the Force, Luke, right? Which basically he turns all the computer systems off and everything, and he just allows something to transcend. When they say force, what they're actually saying is life force. Allow the life force to flow through you. So that's the third M. The third M is magic. It's belief. It's God. And so that's what I'm trying to help people to do, is get them to the point of all this sacrifice. I mean, for me, it came down to one moment in one time to put at least a decade worth of just everything I could possibly sacrifice into one race, one moment. And then to be able to know now, oh, you're at your best when you get just let it go, right? You just get in the car and you drive, you let the car almost drive itself. That's what I'm trying to help people with. So it is extremely, extremely faith-based. And I know that people can actually handle things better if it's called fatalism, is kind of like a technical term, where there's a fate, right? There's something that's beyond you and you just have to allow it to happen.
Yeah, so for me, what encouraged me is I have a relationship with God the Father, right? Yeah. So for me, him being my father, like, he's cheering me on. He's got my back. You didn't make me, so you can't break me. That was like, that would be my effort, like, line. You know what I mean? That comes from Deion Sanders, by the way. That's his line.
Yep.
But like, you didn't make me, so you can't break me. Like, that's his, like, effort line. And my big thing on this show, Seth, is like, I'm all about, like, I want people who have different perspectives to be able to be free to share that, So we can realize that, guess what? We have to walk together in humanity right now. My grandmother says a poignant thing. You got to check her out. She's my favorite person. 105. She says this. She says, "This is the worst time we've ever been in my own history." Now, she lived World War One. So I said, "It's worse than World War One time?" She's like, "Yes." I go, "It's worse than World War Two?" She goes, "Yes." She goes, I go, "The civil rights movement, the women's rights movement, worse than that?" She's like, "Yes." And she goes, all these lists. I'll list everything. 9/11, yes. And I go, "Why is it worse now?" And I always love when she says, "It's worse because we used to be a team."
Yeah.
She says, "Our kids are lost because they don't know that when you're a team, you want what's best for everyone. And you not only want what's best, but you don't want to hurt people. You want families you don't want to cheat on families. You don't want some other family to cheat on a family. You don't want to lie, steal. You don't want to kill. You don't want to wrong your neighbor." And she says, everything just seems so confusing for everybody. This is my 105-year-old grandma. So I just want to live that out. And why I love this show is because it's a unique show, because I have guests from all different faith backgrounds, from all different life. And it's really out of tribute to my family that taught me everyone deserves to be loved.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone deserves to be believed in. Everyone deserves to say that they have dignity, whether they agree with you or not, whether they're on the same page. Like for me, I'd never say magic. You know what I mean? Like for me, I'm like, all right, I'm not going to say that, because I believe that I have a relationship with a God who loves me, who cares for me, who I can talk to personally, and will be with me. Like my self-talk would be like me talking to God, and God like me speaking, and have that relationship. But guess what? It's an honor, Seth, to be with you today, because what you're sharing about, I think so many people need these real life success stories, and they need to think about why. Why did that happen for Seth and not for you or you or you? And there are reasons, and you can do things better. And what do you hope? One of my favorite questions is what's your legacy, Seth? We only live for so long, and we know how, as we get older, of course, we know how little we are, and even the effect that we can make on people. What is your legacy going to be, Seth? And your legacy in my life, if I never talk to you again or I never meet you again, you are a kind soul. And I want to thank you for that. And you are kind because of your perseverance. And also you do have faith, and you have faith in humanity. You have faith in people. You have faith in God. And I just want you to know that I'm very thankful for you on this show. So
I feel the same for you, and I feel the same for your audience, for the show. I think to answer your legacy question, I started doing speaking been doing it a lot now. And so recently I was about to go up on stage, big room full of business people. And this lady turns around to me. I'd been, introduced as a motivational speaker. She turns around and she goes, "How did you become a motivational speaker?" And I was like, I can't even answer that question. I don't. So I started with that, right? So that's always been my thing. Let's go into the resistance. So I stood up there in front of everyone and I said, "Someone in the back of the room just asked me, how did I become a motivational speaker? I don't know. I'm just going to stand up here. I'm going to tell you my stories. These are real things, and we'll see what happens." And people, after they heard all these stories of before and after and these simple tools, everybody became like little children, right? You could see them start to dream. You could see them want to share this with their own children. And what I realized was it's a gift, that travels through me out into the audience to awaken, those dreams inside people. Because as Kobe said, you got to protect your dreams. You got to protect your imagination. And, people can, basically, for me, I always feel like I was called once by, actually it's the father of the NHL player. He was a well-known football coach, and he'd call me the super Sherpa. And a Sherpa is the guys that go up to the top of Mount Everest is probably the most
Yep.
famous one. And it really is like that, right? Like I'm exposing myself to the elements too, and I feel like my life's on the line. Our livelihood, this vision, this goal, this dream of yours becomes mine, and we're in this together. There's a team to it. And so for me, when I turn around and share this with the audience, I really want them to believe in their dreams. I want them to know that that thought came to them and no one else. I want them to know that their authenticity is their superpower, right? Like that's what makes you a superhero, is that there's no one else like you. No one else like you that had that thought. And you should go after that thought. And you should go after the lessons that you're going to learn in the pursuit of that thought. Because I'll also flip it around, and anyone, the people that I do help win, my first question is always, what do you feel? What does it feel like now you finally won? And they'll say, oh my gosh, it feels amazing. I want to go do it again. It's a trick question, right? Because winning is unfulfilling. Because you win 10 times, you want to win 11 times. But it's the journey. It's us walking and going through all of those challenges
So true.
to the top of the mountain. That is it. This is your bliss right now. It's not winning whatever you think it is, right? And so it's still worth going striving for it, because it is something that motivates us. But we got to appreciate the here and now, and we got to believe, as you were saying, it's a direct communication with your faith. And I, pray every single day. I have this ongoing conversation, trying to live in a state of gratitude, because I think that's an expansive winning mindset, is gratitude.
Oh yeah, big time. And I just want to thank you, because this doc series that we've worked on, and I hope everybody's going to watch it. I rekindled my dream because of these kids, and I think, my dream was to build, when I was 19, was to build sports complexes for kids to really be able to encourage them. And I kind of forgot about it because I tried so many times to do it, and I failed. And so I'm coaching this team, and I'm like, "What's your dream?" I'm trying to get, and the one kid's like, "I want to be a dad." And the other one's like, "I want to be an entrepreneur." And the other one's like, "Oh, I want to play, in the NBA." I'm like, "All right, you can do that." And then one day the kid goes, "What's your dream, coach?" And I got shook, because I was so used to believing in other people's dreams that I forgot some of mine.
Yeah.
And I go, to be honest, it's one reason probably why I'm coach, is I want to build your amazing fitness sports complexes where everybody can come in, and not only will they be able to lift and work out and play basketball and football and etc., but they'll be believed in, and they'll know they're amazing.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Well, that's going to happen, coach." I go, "All right, man, I appreciate it." And so then I felt like I was failing them if I didn't believe it could happen. You know what I mean? I'm like,
Yeah.
All right, it's going to happen, guys.
Yeah.
And I want you to know you do have that gift, and it is a God-given gift. And thank you for using that gift, and keep it up, man. I want to call you and be like, let's hang out. You're good at this, Seth. I want to tell you, you're pretty good at this, man. You got it.
Well, I always say, greatness is a frequency, like on a radio dial, right? That we're just tuning it in. And, you've talked to a lot of great people that are really good at what they do. And it's probably, there's a consistency between everyone. And that's what I try to notice. And in order for you to see the greatness in others, you have to see it in yourself first. I always bring that back to you. So Justin, you see me because you see yourself. That's very important. And you're a preacher too. And then as a preacher, we got to practice what we preach. So everything you believe in these kids, they believe in you, and you believe in you should believe in yourself.
For sure. And I thank you for that. And we'll have to connect and keep this going. But let me tell you something. You are amazing. and you're a gift, and keep it up and keep encouraging people. And I hope you look up Seth, look up Seth Pepper and his story and all the good things that he's doing. And don't forget to stay encouraged, to be encouraged, and to go out and encourage others. Because if we were the most encouraging country in the world, if we were the most encouraging world, just think what this country would be. Ask yourself, what did I do today? Was it about encouraging others, or was it a discouragement to others? You were an encouragement to me, Seth, and keep encouraging others out there. All right, brother?
All right, love you, brother. Keep going. Amen.
Amen to you. All right. I'm going to make you a preacher. That's what I'm going to do. We're going to be doing this together. You're like, you got to make your first dream happen,
Awesome.
like what your friend told you.
All right. Well, thank you, Justin. Thank you to everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Encouragement Conquers All podcast with Justin Fatica. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this episode with someone who needs a little encouragement. For more uplifting content, follow us on our social media pages. See you in the next episode.